Welcome to Victoria Rumble Room, a show that looks at issues on Vancouver Island, British Columbia, Canada, the universe. And speaking of the universe, across town in his hidden lair is Mr. Universe himself, also Mr. Croatia, the Croatian sensation, John Juricic.
Rock and Robin, there's so many cool references there. You know, first of all, Mr. Universe, you know, I am so pumped up at the...
Well, we can all see you're working out, John.
And so pumped up at the, you know, relieving of the COVID restrictions that are happening us around. This summer is going to be so different. I'm getting my second vaccine really soon. And
me too.
Hey, as yourself and so many others, I want to sit down in restaurants. I want to travel. I want to see a sporting event. I want to be part of the community again, which leads me to question what is going on with Greater Victoria Council and Canada Day. You know, okay. Let's talk about this for a second. So Canada Day, the headlines: Canada Day is being canceled. No, it's not. First of all, the city of Victoria,
not in Saanich or Esquimalt, Johnny.
Right, they're celebrating somewhere in Canada, but the city of Victoria celebrations are being canceled. Robin, I've been going to these celebrations for about 30 years. I know most of you are going, John, you can't be that old, but I have been. They are a central part of our family's sort of social calendar. We go with another couple. All of our kids go down there. We love the community that's there. And I get that can't happen today, this year, because of COVID. Maybe something could have happened. Maybe there could have been some kind of restricted celebration. Canada Day is not being canceled, but that big event downtown is being canceled for this year. Okay, we're not yet fully out of health challenges.
But that's not the reason it's been canceled, John.
Well, okay. Now, the second part of this is that we're substituting this so-called cancellation to honor, to respect, to discuss, to reflect on the extraordinary tragedy that's happened in Kamloops and now across Canada. The death of these children in the residential schools. And that is honorable and noble in of itself to reflect and think about it. But here's what pisses me off, okay? Don't be patronizing to me. Don't be paternal to me. I can make those decisions on how to deal with that myself. I in my paid gig, I actually handle workforce diversity consulting issues. I work with the First Nations locally. This is a very personal issue to me. I'm very, very upset about it. Don't tell me how to react to it. Don't tell me what I should watch so that I feel better. That's my decision. So lots of really conflicting issues with Canada Day. But come July 1st, I'm going to celebrate.
I don't think either of us like the idea of a nanny state.
Yeah,
and being told how we should behave, or told that we shouldn't be celebrating because we should be feeling badly about things that admittedly are really terrible. There are things in this society that we don't like. We can certainly hang our heads about the First Nations. We know the First Nations have had a very tough time, really, since settlers came here several hundred years ago. And I think that we have to honor the hurt in our First Nations. It's not something that should be stowed away. But the fact that we're talking about this and the fact that we're showing this respect, I think, is essentially Canadian. We're showing Canadian values by actually talking about this and honoring this. We're not shuffling it under a rug. We're not pretending that this isn't a problem. And we are saying that it is essentially a Canadian fact that Canadians care, that we actually look at these different issues with compassion. And that should be celebrated. Why aren't we celebrating that? Why isn't that the thing that we honor on Canada Day? Why aren't we taking time aside to remember the grave up in Kamloops and other graves that are being discovered in other residential schools, and maybe even reflect on some of the things we'd like to see for our First Nations in the future, because our First Nations are Canadian too. We're all Canadian. It's a way for us to honor the entire country, and I just don't think that should be lost. So by all means, Victoria Council, if you want to cancel a video event to think about the First Nations, fine. But let's not forget that we're all in this together. We should be working on this together. And I, for one at least, will be heartily waving my maple leaf flag on July 1st.
Robin, excellent points. And what I like most about what you've said, actually all of it, but what resonates with me is that we are all together as a community. And what happened to discussions with the local First Nations around how to celebrate on Canada Day? Both Songhees Nation and Esquimalt Nation declined to be involved with this video. So Victoria Council, hello, did you not ask? So that's the core problem. What about a discussion around how do we deal with these issues together with the regional First Nations communities? We need to do this together as Canadians. Absolutely. Working together.
We live in a time right now where everybody's condemning the past. And I'm not saying there aren't things from our past that we should look back on and think, wow, we should have done that differently. And I do believe that we need to really be cognizant of the fact that there are needs for change and there are needs for new attitudes. But what I really can't stand is the fact that we're actually seeing vandalism now directed at some of our symbols from the past. For example, red paint tossed all over Queen Victoria. Queen Victoria, her name passed on to our city. You may not like the fact that Victoria is the name of our city. You may not like the fact that the British monarchy, which is still actually the head of state in this country, but you may not like the image of Queen Victoria. But really what you're doing is you're denigrating all of us. You're attacking all of us. And these people that do these things, they wonder why they're not being heard by the wider public, why they're not being respected by the wider public. Well, the wider public will respect you if you respect the wider public. You can't just throw paint on everybody and expect the whole society to stand with you. It doesn't work that way.
Totally with you. That doesn't make sense. I attended a ceremony over the weekend up in Nanaimo, and it was with the Tottenham residential care center, and the ceremony was blessing the land on a new construction site. 5 nations were involved, and the elders from 2 of those nations apologized to the group at hand for the paint being thrown on Queen Victoria. They recognize that cannot help anything, that cannot help discussions, cannot help understanding, cannot help learning. Robin, the majority of us follow your opinion, believe that.
Being unprincipled. They're showing violence, or they're showing discourtesy when they're being unprincipled. How are those Canadian values? I don't share those values. I don't see how that's being Canadian.
Yeah, exactly. And I think all of us feel that way. I think at the end of the day, there will be a few bad actors that will be pointed out. Talking about getting riled up, as bad as that is, right beside that issue is this issue of vaccination passports or vaccination evidence of that you've been vaccinated. I do not understand why there's any opposition to this whatsoever. On any other kind of matter in which being beside somebody, luckily you and I, although we look like we're beside each other, are not. But if we were in a restaurant, we would be sitting at some length, between us. We'd probably be wearing a mask. Gladly, we would be doing that willingly. Don't get this, Robin. I don't get it.
Well, when you consider that we're up to over 75% of British Columbians have had at least one shot. Canada is now leading the world in terms of first shots for COVID, and we're rapidly moving towards 2 shots. We'll have the majority of people in this province will have their 2 shots by August. And so we're moving in that direction. Canadians want to get vaccinated. I don't think there's a big push in Canada against getting a card that shows you've been vaccinated. So if I'm a business, I'm a restaurant, I'm holding some public event, I might think, well, I sure wouldn't mind people when they come to the door showing me their card to show me they've had their vaccination, because I can tell you, I don't want to sit in a restaurant beside somebody who hasn't been vaccinated.
Right?
I don't want to be served by somebody who hasn't been vaccinated.
Yeah.
I don't want to sit in a public event, even if it's outside of a soccer game or a hockey game or something like that,
Yes.
and sit beside somebody who hasn't had a vaccination. If you don't want a vaccination, fine, but there should be a price to pay. We all have to stand together on this.
Yes. I'm totally with you, Robin. So I really hope that is not going to be, this is not going to be an ongoing problem. All of us want society to open. I've lately gone to a couple of events where I've been attending with other people, and we've been safe, health, abiding by the regulations. It has felt great. I'm telling you.
No, I think we're all on the same page there, John. And I think we also are looking forward to our American cousins coming back, fully vaccinated, of course.
Yes,
We're hoping to see the Clipper and maybe the Coho back by this summer, and cars coming across with U.S. plates. It's not going to be a bad thing as long as we have confidence that those folks have their vaccines. And I believe internationally, that's not going to be a big issue. They are going to be expecting proof of vaccinations at the border, but why not proof of vaccinations from everybody that lives here too? Anyway, joining us now to talk about all things tourism is Paul Nursey. He is the president and CEO of Destinations Greater Victoria. And I know that he's very concerned about how things have gone in the past in terms of how the businesses in tourism and hospitality survive, but he is looking ahead, sees some glimmering that things are finally turning around. So that's good news. Let's zoom him in.
Welcome, Paul Nursey, to the Victoria Rumble Room, where the action is in Victoria. We like to think so anyway. I'm sure I've been wanting to talk to you for some time because, you've been at the epicenter of an extraordinarily difficult tourism sector, hospitality sector in this region, and how COVID has impacted this industry. And so there were some tough times for you guys. How goes the battle? How's it going? Tell us about your reactions.
Yeah, reactions. Well, what an event, first of all. The black swan of black swans. I don't think you can ever plan or war game or prepare for a structural 90 to 96% reduction in revenue for almost 2 years. But then of course some good programs have come along. We seem to be coming out of it. There seems to be a little bit of stability coming back, but it has been the most difficult challenge we'll probably face in our career, and most difficult leadership challenge, the most difficult strategy challenge, the most difficult
personal challenge.
I would say leadership challenge. I hope people can find their own joy and happiness and other things beside work. But I do think that it has put all of us to the test, and we are starting to come out the other side. So it's been an incredible journey, and I believe I'm a better CEO as a result of what I've gone through. But it has been absolutely incredible.
Now, we've been talking, Paul, John and I, about the whole issue of the borders relaxing within British Columbia now. Thanks to the announcement this week by the provincial government, people can now travel freely around the province. So that means immediately we'll get more visitors from other parts of British Columbia, and that's got to be good news. The federal borders, the border with the United States, and a lot of the airport travel is still shut down. What are your feelings about them reopening the border? How soon? And how important to you is it that the Americans that come are fully vaccinated?
Sure. So there's a lot of elements to your question there, Robin. So I'll just segregate them a little bit. Isn't it curious that we have new borders within Canada, and then within British Columbia, we have health region borders, and in some cases our health regions have been merged, kind of for arbitrary legal reasons around restrictions. And of course, now provincial borders and territorial borders are harder than they've ever been before as well, too, within our confederation. So that's been a new development over the last couple of years. I'll get to the international borders and the U.S. borders in a second. But one thing I want to make very, very, very clear, while we're very grateful for the ability to have interprovincial travel, large urban centers like Vancouver and Victoria cannot survive on British Columbia travel alone. It is just not there. In fact, we're the source markets for places like Parksville, Tofino, Kelowna, Osoyoos, lakeside, mountainside, oceanside resorts. What cities rely on are conventions. Cities rely on festivals. Cities rely on major sporting events. Cities rely on being an international gateway for tour and travel series that often go to multiple places. Cities rely on high yield getaways from places like San Francisco. So, we will get our fair share here in Victoria, and we performed quite well later on in the second half of 2020. Once the traveling public got over their fear, I think, of taking the ferry and other transportation modes, we performed pretty well in August and September of last year because Victoria has a bit of a half resort, half city feel to it. But Vancouver really, really suffered. So the strategy of relying only on the provincial source market is not one for success. We need a logical reopening. And we have to remember we are on the very southern tip of an island south of the 49th parallel. So I can't underscore enough the need to get that U.S. border reopened again in a safe manner. On vaccinations, I think all of us want to reopen in a safe way. And if you look at the U.S. source market, it is very much segmented. We segment based on, we have in Canada anyway, something called the Explore Quotient. We do psychographic segmentation based on the values of travelers. As we know, America has many different communities within it. And we know that those populations that tend to travel internationally anyways have high passport ownership in the United States, have a propensity to travel to Canada, are typically those higher educated and most likely to get vaccinated anyway. So if there was a requirement for vaccination for US travelers, I don't think that would really put a dent into our business profile because those would likely be our main customer psychographic segments anyways.
You'd still like to see some sign that they have had their vaccinations. I assume you would prefer.
Yeah, absolutely, because I think that would ensure that our community would be more welcome to embrace visitors, and community support and community acceptance is an important tool as we build back here, and it's vital.
Paul, it's interesting. Like if we were to just, it is impossible, but hypothetically, just take out COVID, just sort of take out the word, and say to each other, that something's just going to happen to us in the next several years that will destroy the major industry in the city by 98%. It'll decimate our economy. We really won't be able to do anything normal that we ever could do. What could actually we do amongst ourselves to prevent that from ongoing once we solve the problem? How about we find some way to determine who's sick and who's not sick, or who's been vaccinated or hasn't been vaccinated? Would it not be a natural reaction for everyone to just go, yay, of course, like I want to go to a restaurant and I just want to know that I'm safe. Why is this not just being embraced like wholly by government, by everybody?
What's been really interesting in Canada and BC, and I'm just going to be very general about this, has been the resistance to technologies such as rapid testing. I'm not going to go too deep into this, but we've seen in other jurisdictions, such as the Netherlands in particular, many parts of Europe, many parts of many kind of what I would call more advanced economies and well-governed economies, but are more reliant on tourism. I'm going to use French Polynesia as an example. Many Caribbean countries, they've been able to demonstrate the ability to integrate tools like rapid testing into their layers of protection and reopen more efficiently and provide certainty. There was a time period, let's call it in February, March, where we were in a very difficult position, both medically and also in our tourism industry, because we were seeing tour operators cancel not only all their tour series for 2021, but also 2022 and 2023, because Canada seemed to be sending us negative messages about travel, about rapid testing, and they were taking their wholesale business to other jurisdictions around the world where there was more certainty. Like any business, there's a wholesale distribution network. Hotels, attractions, and whatnot are booked a year or two in advance. Deposits are paid, contracts are entered into, and we saw the whole machinery grind to a halt. Fortunately, as the vaccinations have picked up here in Canada in the last six weeks or so, and governments have sent more positive messages, we are starting to see that unlock a little bit, and we may be able to salvage a little bit of 2022. 2021 will be very muted. 2022 will also be very muted, and I don't see robust recovery until 2023.
Do you see an improvement, though, this summer if, in fact, there's some rumbling that the border could open this summer at some point.
Yeah, that
And
would
then I would think there'd be some cautious traffic coming north from the United States, the people that actually own properties up here, or people who've long wanted to come up to Victoria who will take that opportunity. Do you think that could make a difference and at least make this summer a better summer for our tourism industry than last summer was?
Well, it will be better than last summer for sure, because more Canadians will travel because they'll be vaccinated. So that's good news. I think that's a incremental news. If the border reopens, that will also be incremental good news. The reality is that there's huge pent up demand in America, and they are traveling like never before. They're living life. U.S. areas of the Caribbean are seeing record numbers. We are seeing huge numbers of travel within the United States. Records are being smashed on a week-to-week, month-to-month basis. As people it's like the end of a war. People are euphoric. Yeah. They're out there spending money. We're much more cautious here in Canada. So I think it'll come back. What has really been challenged, though, and disrupted has been the distribution systems, the aviation system, the rail system, the tour operator system, how a travel agent sells into a receptive tour operator, which is a wholesale piece. Things like what we call a bed bank, where tour operators will book a bunch of hotel beds and release them at a certain point in time. All that wholesale distribution has been completely smashed, and that's what's going to take some time. And a large business cannot survive on just people deciding on Wednesday to come for that weekend, right? Yeah. So that's the piece that's going to come back, take some time to come back. And then until that comes back, you won't see certainty in terms of rehiring, growing staff a lot, reinvesting in hard capital and plant, which makes us more competitive. We want to make sure we don't rust out compared to other jurisdictions like the Middle East, where there's massive investment in capital and product. So these things all have big implications. I suspect we're going to have a better summer than 2020, and 2022 will be better, but we won't be firing on all cylinders again until 2023.
So Paul, let's address the elephant in the room. Hold on. There are already numerous elephants in the room, but this is a big tourism elephant. Okay, cruise ships. Okay.
My favorite topic.
Cruise ships.
My favorite elephant.
Obviously, Americans, specifically some politicians in central USA, are trying to stop these cruise ships from hitting our Canadian ports at all. Tell us what's going on. What do you think's going to happen? What's are we going to see cruise ships next year?
Well, I can't predict what's going to happen, but I will say a couple of things. From the Canadian side, we need to send positive, coherent signals into the cruise industry. I was very heartened to see Minister Fleming be assigned to the file as of this weekend. He was on local radio this morning, providing the most coherent and positive and constructive message on this file from the provincial government that I've seen. This is a federal decision. Transport Canada is driving it, but the provincial government does set the tone at the top. We're the largest coastline, and they're the ones that can signal that this is very important and why it's very important. I think it's very important for many reasons that many may not understand. Esquimalt graving docks and the longshoremen. It's not just retailers on Government Street, and also for the broader visitor economy. This is a free familiarization tour to 800,000 people to Victoria for the first time. A certain percentage will want to come back on land-based vacations, which are more lucrative, right? So this is not a segment of the business that we can look down upon, take for granted. Our small businesses need any kind of certainty they can get right now. And this is just risk and uncertainty layered upon risk and uncertainty. So that's why I've been raising my voice. And up until today, have been expressing my disappointment in our political leaders around the tone that they've set vis-a-vis cruise. But as of this morning, it's changed. And I'm I call it as I see it kind of person. And the provincial government is on it, it looks like now, with a very coherent strategy. And, some of the stuff in the States, I think is saber rattling as part of a broader Buy America, Consume American kind of trend. But we'll just have to see. And it's like anything on your risk map or any business's enterprise risk strategy, is that, this is a low likelihood but high impact event. And we need to do everything we can to minimize that risk.
I'm not going to get you to say this, Paul, because we're being very nice to government in a general sense on this interview. But I would say that if Quebec was as reliant on cruise ships for revenue as British Columbia is, the federal government would be on it a lot faster with a lot more vigor, I would suggest, because of voting numbers. However, all of that said, I think we'd like to leave this interview on a positive note. Maybe you could just comment quickly on the importance of British Columbians coming here this summer. And also, I guess, not to lose sight of the fact that Victoria is a great place to visit for Americans, for people all over the world. And maybe that's our ace in the hole in terms of the future of the cruise ship industry. They'll be reluctant not to come here because, let's face it, compared to some of those little towns in Ketchikan, Victoria has a lot to offer.
Yeah, so Victoria is a tremendous leisure and convention destination. We were in the top 10 small cities in Condé Nast Travelers Readers Poll, so that's real readers, the people who are passionate about travel, and that was the only Canadian city, large or small, to be on that list for the last couple of years. So more than Quebec City, Halifax, Toronto, Vancouver, Banff, go down the list. So we're often hard on ourselves, but I often think we don't understand what we have here as well, too. The other area I'm just going to build on for a couple seconds as we wrap up here is the tremendous amount of domestic aviation that's flowing into this market. We haven't had direct connection between Ottawa and Victoria, and we've been working on that for years, connecting the two capitals. We now have service from both WestJet and Air Canada starting up. Right. We will have Swoop Direct Air from Toronto, a competition to Air Canada. That's coming back in. We have new connections to Kitchener, Saskatoon, Winnipeg, and others. We're working on some stuff in the States right now, which I can't speak to because these are publicly traded companies. But the other piece is that we are a tremendous leisure destination, and leisure leads right now. Business travel and conventions will come back a little later. I think we're very well positioned, but until we have a roadmap back for the American border, easing of restrictions from the Canadian provinces and intra-provincial travel, and that's what we've been so vocally advocating for. Without a roadmap, we can't plan. And now we're starting to get a bit of a roadmap, and we're, just as we've been advocating vocally, we're grateful to have received it, and we can work with it.
Wow, I'm so glad to hear Paul Nursey sounding relatively optimistic about what's happening this summer, what's going to happen in the fall. That industry has been, it's just had a hammer taken to it for 2 years. I'm so relieved to hear that maybe we're moving out. Maybe we're moving out of these Depression era stories and standards and situation. Let's hope the border opens soon and safely. Folks come back and forth. They're going to their favorite shops, their restaurants, and watering holes this summer to support local business.
Yeah, I'm very optimistic as well. I think a thumbs up to John Horgan. I think that the provincial government has acted very responsibly through the circuit breaker, if you like, and now reopening things. I think there's a lot of confidence in the community that we can now open the doors on a lot of the hospitality sector. And I think the premier and this government have really thought this through. Doesn't mean I universally love everything about our current government, but I think they definitely get a tip of the hat on how they have handled this COVID situation. And another tip of the hat, a shout out to Esquimalt. I read with great interest that Esquimalt Mayor Barb Desjardins actually was dancing a jig because she heard, isn't that great to dance a jig?
She's a great friend of the Rumble Room, right on.
She's a friend of the Rumble Room. And she heard from our health minister, Adrian Dix, that Esquimalt is going to be getting an urgent primary care center. It's going to be open this spring. Apparently there's 5 of these centers on Vancouver Island. It means that from now on, if you live in that region, in the region that I happen to live in, you'll have access to doctors and nurse practitioners on a regular basis. They will become your doctor or your nurse practitioner. And a lot of people no longer have a family doctor. We had one when we lived in Victoria. We moved to Vancouver for a few years. We've come back. Our doctor's retired. And it's something we need, especially, John, as I'm getting older, as you're getting older, to have that kind of medical attention is a good thing. So a big thumbs up on that issue. And, as we get older, we think about what's going to be next, John. What's next for us? And maybe we're thinking about, maybe ghosts, John. maybe ghosts.
Uh-oh.
And that takes us to our next topic.
Oh, man. I'm telling you, this interview with Ian Gibbs, who's part of a team of ghost tour guides, is something I can't wait to talk about, because, we're talking tourism today. We're talking about enhanced tourism. This is something that's very popular when things are healthy. These ghost tour guides. Victoria's quite a haunted town. It's got quite the history. And you can actually sign up for these ghost tours, ghost walkarounds down Government Street and other areas to hear ghostly stories mixed with really a ton of city history. Scary, but fun. Ghouly, but interesting. Let's zoom into the great unknown with Ian Gibbs.
And if you're looking for something almost in a haunted quality, something exciting you can do in the evening as it's getting dusky and you're wondering, ooh, this is kind of scary, you can go on a ghost walk. There's a ghost walk available in Victoria. Who knew? Well, I can tell you for a fact that Ian Gibbs knew because he leads the ghost walk and he joins us now in the Rumble Room.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So, I'm going to impart two little very quick anecdotes. One is that I've taken my kids on ghost walks in other cities. We went on a ghost walk in Montreal, where we actually ran across various people dressed up like ghosts, telling us stories from the past of old Quebec, which was quite cool. Yeah. And we did another ghost walk in Kingston, Ontario, and they had some very specific houses and places they took us to with some very morbid stories, and they really brought it home. So it's a really fun way to learn history, and also sort of a fun way to think about an alternate universe, I guess. What's your experience of walking people through this?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was lucky enough to join John Adams, who is the sort of ghostly walks guy, about 6 years ago. So I've been doing this about 6 years, and it's been a great experience. You get all kinds of people who come on the walks. Some people really into the ghost stories. That's what they're there for. You do get some people who've been dragged along by the people who are really into the ghost stories. And you get other people who just want something fun to do, find out some history. For myself, I learned more about Victoria as a city and its history than I ever would have from a book. I mean, it is so rich. It is, I mean, we were not, the nice little touristy, drink tea and go on a horse and carriage ride town. We were a rough place to be. This was a gold rush town. That's really how we came into our own. So a lot of people don't know that. And unfortunately, as is often the case, a dark history comes with a gold rush town. So we've got that. This is so
exciting. The inevitable, obvious question. Have you seen one?
No. You know what, in my many years of doing ghost walks and being interested in ghost stories and writing ghost books and podcasting, I have never seen a ghost. I have heard a ghost, and I actually did on the ghost walk, if you want to hear that story.
Yes, tell us, please.
All right, well, it's my one and only encounter, and there are other guides who've had other experiences, so this was just my own personal thing. I was down in Helmkin Alley, which is right around where the keg is. It's sort of back there, just off Bastion Square. And it was a busy night. It was a Halloween walk. And on Halloween, we put through multiple groups of 30 or 40 people, sometimes 2 or 3 an hour of those size of groups. So my brain was very much on the next stop, right? I'm telling the story, but as I'm telling the story, I'm thinking, okay, where are we going next and what's going to be there? And Helmkin Alley is a specific, you could say sometimes problematic place. Alleys are seldom places where the clean and the friendly hang out. And so my strategy... Not that I wouldn't know what you're talking about. No, sir. My theory is any place they place an outside urinal is going to be a place where certain people are going to hang out. So at the top of the alley, at the back of the Bedford Arms Hotel, or the Bedford Regency Hotel, up there at the top, that's where I'm thinking what's happening down in Helmkin, because it goes down and then Helmkin runs this way. Yes. So what I would do is I would tell the story, and then I would say in our next story, we're going to hear about, this ghost in the well kind of thing. And I would take off down into Helmkin Alley so that I could get there. And if there was some unpleasantness going on in the alley, I could hold the group just above the area where that implies. And usually people, if they were down there doing stuff, if they heard a large group coming, they would clear out, and then I would lead the group in. So that's where my brain is. As I'm shooting down into the alley by myself, just as I'm coming around the corner into the actual alley, a man's voice right beside my ear said, "Ian," which is my name. And I kind of looked, and of course there's no one there, but I'm so focused on what I'm doing, I don't even think about it. I get into the alley, I've got my back up against the building, I'm waiting for the group to join me. And the general rule is the larger the group, the slower they move. So it took a few minutes. Well, by the time the group filtered into the back alley, my brain then processed what had happened, putting it together with the ghost story I knew from down there. And I went, oh, I know who that was. And it's one of the stories we tell down there is about a ghost who, his nickname was Limey. And he was a frequent flyer of the Victoria prison system at the time. He would get drunk, get in a fight, go to jail for a month, and this was sort of his perpetual cycle. Well, Limey one day coming back from prison work, because of course they didn't sit in the prisons back then, they were out unloading ships or digging wells or whatever was required. They were leading the group back from working in the colony all day, and they were all chained together. It was a typical kind of thing. He angered one of the guards, and the guard pulled out his truncheon and he hit Limey in the head. And unfortunately, he hit him too hard and he killed him. And the guard was so annoyed by this that they were so close to the jail, because it was at the other end of the alley in Bastion Square. He said to the other prisoners, "I don't care, drag him back." And he made them drag Limey's body back up through the alley. And then he would have undone him and buried him in the prison yard. So Limey now shows up. People will cutting through there. We'll hear chain noises, of course, makes sense. They will hear someone come up behind them very, very quickly, the footsteps. They turn around, there's no one there. And then his signature move, which finally clicked into my slow-moving brain, was he likes to come up beside people and cough right beside their ear. Very unmistakable. And then, of course, they turn, there's no one there. And I think he thinks it's funny.
I'm getting goosebumps listening to you.
Well, the fact that he knew my name, I'm not sure is a good thing. I think I would have preferred a more anonymous cough. But I kind of went, huh. So following up with that, I went back to the place where all the guides were. And believe it or not, we don't sit around talking about ghost stories. Hey, where'd you go for dinner? Like that kind of thing. And I said to them, has anyone else had anything odd happen to the Elkin Alley? And two of the other guides were like, yep, absolutely. What? And told me their own stories. And the one other guide who had a pretty significant thing happen to him down there, it involved our friend Limey. So if you're going to experience any kind of pretty dependable entity, energy, whatever you want to call it, it's probably going to be Limey, and it's probably going to be in Elkin Alley.
Wow, isn't that something?
But have I ever seen a ghost? I have not. I'm afraid.
It's pretty close, Ian.
Yeah,
pretty close.
Close enough. Close enough.
Not to move off of your tour, because it sounds fantastic. My daughter saw a ghost.
Oh, whereabouts?
I raised my family in Fairfield. We were in a 1911 house.
Yeah.
And there was a 1911 house right beside ours that had a front porch.
Okay.
And this was just a regular evening. It wasn't Halloween.
No.
And, she's walking by to go up a couple of doors up to see a friend. So she's walking by the house next to ours, and there was somebody sitting in that front porch, area.
Yeah.
And she looks up, and it's a woman in a very old dress, and she's in a rocking chair, quite an elderly woman, and she'd never seen her before.
Yeah.
And so my daughter smiled at this woman, and the woman smiled back at her, and my daughter turned away, and then she looked back. She said, "That's so strange to see that woman." She turned back, and there was nobody there.
100%.
Goosebumps times two.
So
absolutely.
You hear these stories. So back to the tour.
Yeah.
Right now, this is a way for people to get involved in Victoria during the close of the pandemic. They're depending on people to come down, use the restaurants, see downtown. It's almost an excuse. Call your friends, bring them down, go on a ghost tour.
Yeah. Usually we have tours twice a night. And we are going to be doing that on the weekends, but they are limited, of course, by size. So we're encouraging people, if you want to go on a ghost tour, you need to sign up and buy your tickets online, because that's how we know who's coming. And it also gives us enough space to allow people to space out. Yeah. I'm going to be on Thursday nights for the next, probably for the summer. So there'll be one tour and it'll be at 8 p.m., 8 till 9. Usually our tours are 90 minutes long. We're condensing that a bit, and it's going to be the same tour. So usually we have 7 different tours, plus we do our 9:30 route, the kind of classic route. Because of COVID, it's condensed down. So we're doing one tour, 8 p.m. Go online, ghostlywalks.com, and you can buy your tickets there. So,
is there something general you could indicate to our, what are we at now, Robin? Conceivably 38 million listeners.
Well, millions of ghostly listeners, along with our
exactly. I can say that with some confidence.
Our living audience isn't quite as large as our ghostly audience. But it's
mine neither.
So is there kind of a general, like, we'll go here, 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 is it sort of thing?
Yeah. So we started at the visitor center, downtown, right in the Inner Harbor.
Yeah.
That's where we all meet, and you would check in with the guide, and then we would head out into the night. I know a couple of the stops off the top of my head: the Empress Hotel. When I wrote my book, Victoria's Most Haunted, the Empress ended up having. Oh, sure. The Empress ended up having 11 different ghost stories just on its own.
No.
Yeah,
oh.
And if you talk to the new owners, they'll say, nope, there's no ghosts here. But that's pretty common for owners. It's funny. Owners, managers, they'll either go one way or the other. They'll go, yeah, full ghost, bring it on. Or they'll say, nope, don't know what you're talking about. Please don't scare anyone.
11 ghosts are roaming around the Empress.
Just
all of them inside?
All in there. Different floors, different levels.
Maybe.
But yeah, they're all in there. It's pretty cool.
So this is fantastic that this is going on, and it's something I hope a lot more people hear about. It seems to me that there's a lot of things we can learn about our past this way, and it's a colorful way to learn about people that were here before. And as you say, Ian, there's a lot of interesting history in this city people aren't aware of. They think about it all as being so leafy and flowers and Bouchard Gardens.
Absolutely.
Hail fellow well met. They don't think about the miners and the brothels and the people in jail and all the opium that was going on in this city, and it makes it a very
100%.
colorful place.
Yeah, and I mean, Victoria, at one point, we started out as a little fur trading fort, with 300 people. And then within 3 months, we went from 300 people to about 30,000 people. Right. And it was all because of the gold rush. And they were not here to build churches and start schools. And so the support system that came with them were exactly what you said: the brothels, the saloons, the bars, the hotels. That's who came, and that's those people. They talk about chasing your fortune in the gold fields, but it was the people who stayed behind and provided goods and services. They're the ones who made the money. And what a colorful bunch of people they were. So I think we're really lucky because we have quite a condensed downtown. And we have so many original buildings that have those stories still attached. And it's, I have lived literally all over Canada. I grew up in Calgary, lived in Winnipeg, lived in Toronto, lived in the Maritimes. And I have never been in a haunted city. I have to say, it is insane. It's like the ghosts are stacked here. So it's pretty cool. It's a really neat city. And I'm excited to get back to it because we haven't been able to do the ghost tours on a regular basis. So I'm really looking forward to getting back to it and being with people again and telling those stories.
Wow. I've got to kind of get unscared a bit. That was so much fun, Robin. I really hope that we can get more guests like that. I think we're going to try to. I'm definitely heading downtown this summer, hopefully with my grandkids. I'm going to have to check with my kids whether they'll allow it. Certainly with my wife, Colleen. We're going to check out the ghost scene in downtown Victoria. Ian Gibbs, thank you so much. Great guy, great stories.
We're going to try to have more of these sort of off-the-wall topics. And certainly, I don't think you can get any more off the wall than I guess we're going to have on next week. Howie Siegel will be joining us in the Rumble Room. Howie, longtime proprietor at Pagliacci's, if you're Italian, Pags downtown, a very, very popular restaurant, now managed by his son Solomon. Howie's going to come talk about the restaurant scene as they emerge from COVID, how things have been going. And I'm sure he'll talk about a lot of other things too, because Howie is a wild man. I'm really looking forward to that interview, John.
That is so great. We're able to get Howie Siegel on the Rumble Room. Now, and boy, oh boy, will he add Rumble to our title. Now, here's the interesting thing about Howie. you and I know about him, and a lot of folks of our generation remember how there's an entire generation that doesn't know who this man is. So we're going to reintroduce him to, let's just call it a younger group of people who will be as entertained as we were and will be this coming
always entertaining. And I'm hoping that people will hear about our ghost guest and will be inspired by him and the message of Paul Nursey earlier from Greater Victoria Destinations, that this is a show to share with your friends, share with your networks. We want to get the word out. Please support Victoria Rumble Room by doing just that. And John, you're going to explain how people can do that.
Well, not only am I going to explain how they can do that, but I'm going to tell you right now that we've got another great guest for next week. And that is John Wilson of Wilson Transportation. And John, not only is he an owner of a significant business in our region, not only is he a community leader in our region as chair of the Chamber of Commerce, but John is also owner of numerous sports teams. And now that's another tourism-related issue that we're just sort of skimming about, sort of not in an in-depth interview yet, but we're going to hear about some of that, I hope, next week, along with Howie Siegel. And then the whole lot of you, the bazillion listeners that we have, it's now up to a bazillion, Robin, please consider sharing.
Notice how excited my dog is by your presentation, by the way.
I think that he's just enamored. He's overexcited. He had just collapsed.
You're like the dog whisperer. You know, he was all excited, and you came on and look at him. He's having a little nap back there.
Totally. And you know what he's doing? Through sort of his dog talk to others within the community, he's telling other dogs how to share our show. Website, victoriarumbleroom.com. Consider going there. All of our shows are listed. Facebook, where you can also comment. And we've had positive comments. Haven't had any trolling yet. Look forward to our first troller. Anyway, that's at facebook.com/Victoria Rumble Room. And if you're a Twitter person, which I am, I'm not a Twitter person like the other guy down in the States, but we do have a Twitter handle, and that's at Victoria Rumble Room 1, the number 1. And of course, YouTube, where all of our videos are housed. That's called the Victoria Rumble Room with Robin and John. And once again, the Croatian sensation, Mr. Universe. I'm John Juricic.
And I'm Robin Adair, and rumble on!